This video will walk you through some basics of risk assessment and the tools I've used to minimize my risk. And you can apply this to minimize your risk. If you and I aren't friends yet, hi, I'm Letitia Mooney. I'm a coach and advisor for freelance writers and other entrepreneurial creatives. I help them go from zero to hero, to understand and tighten up their workflows, to improve their customer experience, and critically, to make and retain more money without sacrificing their lives or their nights or their weekends. But here's a funny thing. Not one I've met has ever understood risk or has applied risk thinking. Freelance writers don't think about risks to their own businesses except by what's in the media. And that doesn't mean that they understand or apply risk thinking. It means they freak out about it. Take the current AI push, for example. I get panic. I don't get, hey, Letitia, I've done a risk assessment and here's what I'm going to do. They don't understand the risk. They don't understand the benefit. And if you don't understand one, it's impossible to understand the other. Equally, they don't do risk assessments on projects that they do. They go on gut feel for everything. I don't understand why this sale didn't go through. I don't understand why this project fell through. I don't understand what they're going to do about this. Hey, I lost a client and now I'm down this much revenue and I've got all of these bills to pay. They've never done a risk assessment. So what happens when you take the time to do a risk assessment? I'm just going to share some notes, all right? And I'll jot these down as we go. Because if you then want the notes, you can send me an email, say, hey, Letitia, send me these notes, and I'll just send them to you. No obligation to do anything. You will just have them, right? So what happens when you do risk assessments? You, one, learn more about your own business. You understand what you're doing, how you're doing it, and all of the dimensions of that. You learn all about all of the dimensions. All about the dimensions. There's a finance dimension. There's a social dimension. I made friends with this person and now something's happened, and what's the impact of that? The impact of that might mean that you never see that person again. It might mean that they tell 10 of their friends about what you've done or what happened to you. It might mean a good thing. Maybe something happened, but as a result of that, 10 other people that you know come to you and said, I heard about this thing and it actually happened to me too. That happens too. There's a finance dimension, there's a social dimension, there's a bunch of other dimensions. We'll get to those in a little minute. The other thing is that you understand the potential loss, right, in each dimension. You understand how to mitigate the risk, which means you put controls in place in order to prevent it from becoming an issue. Usually you mitigate a risk when you can't eliminate the risk, or you know how to eliminate the risk, or you do eliminate the risk. So there are a bunch of benefits about doing this. The benefits of doing this are, one, it saves you money because you stop doing the things that cause you loss of time, loss of money, loss of face, etc. You don't have to spend time in, for example, legal fees if something goes really badly wrong. You don't have to spend money trying to do, PR campaigns to fix something that's gone wrong. Saves you a heap of money / money loss, right? Saves you a heap of money, saves you from money loss. It improves your client retention because once you understand risk, you start applying it across the board. You apply it to your business, which means that you will learn how to spot things that happen ahead of time. And what that means is that you are better at retaining clients because you can identify things before they're an issue and mitigate them or get rid of them. You can anticipate problems before they're raised or before they become an issue. That ultimately, what does it do? It makes your business more robust. That is really what you want to do. So there are a couple of key tools that I use to think about risk. One of them was built by my dad, who had worked his entire career in risk management. And I've applied it to great effect and have built it into other tools that I now use. One of which is a project management workbook, which is phenomenal for managing every dimension of a project. And I will talk about that perhaps in another video, but this one is really just about risk. The other one is a really simple one-pager. So one's a spreadsheet, one's a one-pager. The spreadsheet, so I'm going to talk about the tools. The tools is like there's a spreadsheet that functions as a risk register. A risk register allows you to review your risks. So what's a risk register do? First thing, it allows you to write them all down. The second thing is it allows you to rate them. The third thing is it allows you to score them. So you know how critical are they. And the spreadsheet is fantastic for that because it does it automatically. It allows you to understand which ones to prioritize over which other ones. The other thing that it does is it allows you to create staged interventions. So you know which revision you're looking at. When was it last done? Etc., etc. So in terms of your business management, project management, risk management, the risk register becomes a key tool. If you review your risk register once a year, biannually, like twice a year or quarterly, that's really part of your protocol. The critical thing is to understand that you have to update it every time you mitigate or eliminate a risk. That way it's always up to date. And the funny thing is, once you start using it, you start thinking about it, and just that process improves your business anyway. The second one is a one-pager, which you can use for projects, clients, etc. And the one-pager allows you to identify the risks. So in terms of when do you use the tools, you use the tools, one, the one-pager, identify, two, the register to document, rate, score, rate, and action. You can't use a risk register until you have identified the risks. It's two different processes. It's two different actions. Some people go straight to a risk register and they go, think through all the risks here. But actually, if you do that, you're going to miss the risks in all of the dimensions. The register is a log. It is not the tool for identifying what they are. So let's have a look at the tools for what these tools actually are. The first thing that we're going to look at is we're going to look at the risk assessment. This is a template that I developed for, let me find the screen. This is a template that I developed to identify risks. And I did that because I was finding that I was scrambling to do them. And it combines some risk thinking, some identification with some also like worst case scenario thinking. It makes it much, much easier to understand. So I'll just make this a little bit wider or reduce this down a little bit. Here we go. So that you can see it. All right. So what you do is you put in the project. Let's do this video project. Yeah. Client is you. To meet our agreement, this says that this is an agreement between you and someone else. This has been part of an agreement between you and someone else. That means that you already have an agreement in place. That's a really critical thing to understand. So if we go back to these other notes, right? I'll show, where are we? I'll find the other ones. Find the notes that I was using before. So when you use the one-pager when there's an agreement in place. How do you do that when that's your own business? You go back to your business documentation. For example, if you don't have one, go back to your intention of your business. Go back to your mission or your vision. Go back to your business plan or your strategy canvas. Go back to your goals and dreams for the coming year, whatever they are. That's your agreement. The agreement says, here are all the things that I have promised to deliver on. So you know what are the deliverables. It gives you deliverables or outcomes, if you prefer the word outcomes, whatever the outcome is. Now, we go back to this other doc where we were, and we have this risk assessment template. The template says, to meet our agreement, we need to take an action, okay? We have to do certain things. We have to deliver something. We have to provide something. If you don't understand how these are different, particularly in terms of writing something for a client, let's say you're a content marketer and you do landing pages and blogs and funnels, etc. Your action is what action you are going to take. You are going to, I don't know, edit some blogs for them because they used ChatGPT prior. You're going to edit them. You're going to then write a landing page to match. What you're going to deliver are some markdown files. If, let's say, you write in Markdown because they're lightweight and beautiful, you write in Markdown. You're going to provide a PDF to them. So you're going to deliver a PDF from your Markdown over 2 files, and you're going to provide the client with a phone call review or a meeting, or they're going to mark it up and send it to you. What is the opportunity? Put these here. That not means that you can then start identifying risks based on these things. Then you can say, what risks do I face on the project? For example, client decides that the direction is incorrect after a single review or after multiple reviews. You know these risks intimately. What are all the risks that you face? 1, team members come in. 2, someone moves the goalposts. 3, they lose their funding. 4, whatever the case may be. They decide that actually your voice is really suboptimal, and that's after you've done all the work. 5, they decide that it's not worth the money. What is it? Put everything down that you could possibly think of, whether you've seen it or not. Every potential risk. The key about this is to use even the most ridiculous things. If you have the most ridiculous things in the risk register, I'm just writing these in the notes, okay? In the risk register, even go to the most ridiculous outcome. Because if you don't go to the most ridiculous outcome and it happens, which it can happen, you won't know what to do next. So what is the worst case scenario? Write out the worst case disaster in full. Get right into that fear, right into that imagination. For example, the example on this template is multiple reworks are required. The client felt that it was owed to them because the original works were incorrect, even though they didn't have any clarity to start with, even though you tried to get them to do that clarity, because it will result in time and financial loss, poor rapport, client loss, blah, 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 blah. Absolute worst case as a result of those risks. Then you go to the social effects of that. This is an area we don't often think about in our businesses, but social effects are really important, particularly if you have an online presence and a brand. What are the social effects of the risk? For example, strained relationships with the client. Maybe that's a client you've had for 10 years and it would destroy all of that goodwill. Maybe there is a reputational risk in place, all of the social risks. The financial impact. What is the financial impact of all of the above? There's a financial risk to you. There's a time management risk. There could be scheduling conflicts. There could be lost time in your business. There could be less time for other clients. It could be deadlines crashing into each other. It could be that your next quarter has no money in it. It could be that you lost the client and the financial risk is that that client is, for example, a member of a very well-known networking group and has access to a lot of people and is a bit of a gossip. Not a good combination. Maybe the financial impact of that is you don't land any more sales in that industry. Financial impact. That's also a social impact. You decide where to put that one. But then after all of this difficult, negative stuff, you come down to the bottom of this template. How can you invest to reduce the risks or strengthen the financial or social resilience of your business? And list every single possible way you could do that, whether it is realistic or not. So, for example, the example in this one is maybe keep notes about what has changed and why each change was made. So the delivery is very clear and the client is absolutely certain, so we'll be less likely to question it. That sounds ridiculous, I know. But guess what? I've used it. Sometimes if you create journals of your work where you list every decision that you made, every word, every sentence, every style choice, everything in a separate journal, and you deliver that to your client alongside the work, you say, here's the documentation. You can create documentation about the work. It's docs about the docs. And technical writers know this so well, and they do it so well. And journalists may, I don't know. Marketers, probably not. Travel writers, never seen one do it. You can invest lots of ways. You can invest money to reduce the risks. You can invest in contracts. You can invest in legal advice. You can invest in coaches. You can invest in taking them out to dinner every week so that, let's say, our gossip sees then that the love action is more important than the couple of nitty-gritty things that came up along the way. What are all of the ways that you're going to invest to do that? So once you've done this document, you go to another one and you take this over to your risk register. What does the risk register look like? Let's have a look. I'll show you. We have one over here. Okay, this is one that is pre-populated. It has a risk register at the here, which is what I'm on, and there is a risk calculator here. The main menu is just some buttons that actually, frankly, you don't really need, but my dad loves buttons and he loves fiddling. So, this is what we have. So the risk register says you have a number, so you can identify the risk. It has a revision number. This is the first time it's been documented. It's revision A. It's the date recorded. Okay. The date reviewed or updated. This one has never been updated since the day it was made. And it was a long time ago, right? This is why I'm using it. This doesn't apply to my business anymore or any projects I have on board. Who did the last review? If you're a freelance writer, it will just be you. Put in your name. That's really important when you start getting VAs and other staff members. The risk type, really critical to give it a category name. For example, we've talked about some of them: financial risks, social risks, and what was the other category? Can't even think what it was now. Financial risks, social risks, they're the main ones, right? This is the resilience and risk. Then you can describe what it is, give it a sentence. What is it? Then write out the risk in full. So, for example, this had a social risk type. It was a collaboration descriptor or any client engagement. But the identified risk is that failure of a developer to be engaged in a content strategy process. That becomes really important. Then we have some scores. How likely is it on a score of 1 to 5? What's the consequence of that? How do you know where the scores come from? I'll show you. Here's we go to the risk calculator. There is a calculation that says the risk is calculated by the likelihood of the frequency occurring multiplied by the consequence or the outcome should the event occur. That then gives you a risk level. So first you go down and then you go across. The consequence level is ranked from 1 to 5, but 5, 1, like consequence low, likelihood low, then you have a very low importance risk. If you have a very high consequence and a very high likelihood, then that's your most important risk. This is your priority. So when we come to the likelihood, almost certain, but that these all have definitions. Will it happen annually? Indicative frequency is once a year. Has it happened before? Yes, then you have an idea. If it's rare, it's never occurred, maybe it's once in 100 years. If it's possible, it might occur, but you don't know when. If it's likely, it's happened before. Gives you a sense of how to rank it. Once you know the rank, you come back, you put your likelihood in the likelihood column. The consequence is the same. If it's level 1, there's no minimal business impact, no customer impact, minor legal issues, if any, minor compliance issues, if any, potential business loss, 5,000 or less. Nothing. If it's a major impact, it's a major impact to you, major loss, potential customer litigation action, significant prosecution attached, major litigation, potential business loss is enormous, that's 5. Okay. If you have a serious breach of regulations, potential business loss is up to is like $100,000, then you're in the middle rank. This gives you a sense of the importance of your risk. You can assess it by the financial value or by, the other breaches, for example, or substantial customer impact, whatever it is. So to recap, when you go to your risk register, you put in the details, you put in a likelihood rating, which you get from here on the calculator. You put in your consequence rating, which you get from here on the calculator. That gives you the consequence level automatically. And then it tells you whether it's high or low. Then, is this acceptable? A high risk, no, it's never acceptable, okay? A medium risk might be. If you have a very high risk, then what is the current control for that? What could be a control for that? So in this case, stay in close contact, build a good relationship with them so that they stay engaged in the process. Is it effective currently? When you first do this, if it's currently effective, you won't have the risk. So it's always no. But if you have put a control in place or you're starting to put a control in place, then you might assess that as being effective, okay? If you see that it's an acceptable risk, yes or no, right? You mark it as yes or no. If you have additional actions, then you can put the additional actions in place. So in this case, is it without controls? Is it acceptable? No. We put a control in place. Is it effective immediately? Probably not. It's going to take time. But if we have these particular actions in place to reduce the risk, is it now acceptable? Look, sometimes you're going to have to say yes, so on and so on. Some of these risks are more important in some cases. For example, failure of delivery due to poor scheduling. That's a high risk to you, also to the client. Is it acceptable without controls? No, it's not. How do you fix it? You put in dedicated scheduling with known timeframes, build an additional percentage in to make sure it occurs when you say it's going to occur. Is that effective? Yes, it is. Are you going to accept the risk? Right? Is it acceptable right now? No, because you still have to do it and you still have to function inside of it. So you put some additional controls in place. Then you put a date in your calendar somewhere else to come back to the risk assessment. And then you come back to it at another point. You always come back to it and you do a second analysis to see if the residual risk if there is any residual risk, for example. And you leave your comments and notes here. So if it's not acceptable, you reassess the risk and you go back to the beginning, which means then you would come back to revision B. That way, your risks are always kept and identified. Now, the critical thing for are freelance writers who very rarely assess their risk. I'll just turn that. Okay, here we go. Is that you have to update it. The thing that I have noticed in coaching and advising freelance creatives, particularly freelance writers, is they don't understand their own process. They don't understand their business. They think that the writing process is writing start to finish, even though a third of it is research, a third of it is like another third of it is outlining and sketching and thinking and brainstorming and doing all of these things based on their research. And then maybe 10% of it is writing, and then there's editing and there's delivery and there's client facing stuff and there are sales. There are all of these bits, but they just kind of go, oh, I'm writing this here. All of this stuff is marketing, and they don't break it down. The risk process forces you to write it down. And what it will also do is it makes it then really visible to you. So you will naturally begin thinking about how you can improve your business. You will naturally begin thinking about what happens then if I engage in this process all the time. So when you engage, I'll just put that in here too. When you engage in the risk assessment and management process, you always automatically begin improving your own business. You not only improve it for you, you improve it for your clients. Because when you improve risk at your end, you naturally begin improving the customer experience, because many of those risks overlap with the customer's experience, partly because, as you've seen in the risk register and the risk documentation, partly because that means that there is also a customer impact. There's a customer impact on this risk, there's a customer loss on this bit, which does impact your business, but they're a step along the way. So if something is going to damage you, sure as hell it's going to damage your clients, or at least impact them negatively in some way. The mitigations you put in place will improve their lives, and it will improve your business, and ultimately it will make your business more robust. When you've got a robust business, then you can with more certainty say, I have a customer process that reduces or eliminates customer churn. So if you are one of those freelance writers who are freaking out about AI, and I hear about this all the time, if you're freaking out about AI, you have never done a risk assessment. You don't know what are the legal impacts, even though there are legal cases out against AI developers currently. If you don't know the legal risks, if you don't know the financial risks, if you're jumping into AI without understanding the risks, then you're really working blind. What I want to encourage you to do is to do all of the risk assessments, do them properly, really think about your business and understand what you're doing. Now, that's all I'm going to say on this topic. I am going to do a second video, which is on assessing risk for your clients as part of your sales process, something you can sell actually, but that's different to this. I mean, it's substantially similar, but you can actually work through the risks as part of a sales process, and I'm going to do one based on that. If you have any questions, email me. All my details are attached to this video. Send an email if you want the notes that I've got from this video, and if you want access to the tools, put that in and I'll tell you how to get access to that as well.